Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to the webinar series brought to you by the Centro Institute. My name is Ryan Manchi. I lead the Centro Institute, and I am your host for today. Centro is a provider of software and services for digital advertisers. Our technology is designed to boost media team and business performance by enabling advertisers to plan, buy, and analyze campaigns all on a centralized and collaborative system that we call Basis. We have an amazing team of more than 750 media specialists, programmatic prodigies, social media wizards, account leaders, and really all around digital experts spread across 44 offices who provide our clients with raving fan service at every stage of any campaign. Please note a recording of this webinar and these slides will be shared with you, and we will have some time for questions at the end. I'm so happy that you joined us today. Today, our subject matter is all around emerging social platforms. So these platforms, as they've become more established and usership grows, so do the opportunities for advertisers. And I'm excited that we are joined by a very special guest, Amy Rumpler. Amy is our VP of Paid Social, and Amy oversees the social strategy, execution, and operations nationally for Centro, while leading a team of experts who spend much of their day on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Snapchat, you name it, while also planning and executing hundreds of millions of dollars in paid social. So with that, I will hand it over to Amy to talk to us about emerging social platforms. Amy.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you, Ryan. And I really like that, social media wizards. I'm going to have to steal that and change my title, I think. Thanks for that. And thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you so much, by the way, too, for everyone who was able to join the call today. I'm really excited to discuss this topic with you specifically, because with everything going on in the world today, I think it's really nice to just be kind of looking forward and focusing on the positive future of social media specifically. I wanted to acknowledge the reason that we felt this topic would be compelling for this month's webinar, though, and that is really that with people spending so much more time at home and online in recent months, social activity across all platforms is at an all-time high, as you'll see today. And that activity has really paved the way for the emerging platforms that we're going to be discussing to be well positioned for really strong growth, not only this year, but going into next year in 2021 as well. So the plan for today is that we're going to start by quickly covering COVID-19's impact on the social media platforms. We're going to dive in to talk about a few of the platforms specifically and share some updates on both usage trends as well as some opportunities that exist there for specific advertisers. We're going to leave you with some key takeaways that you can consider in terms of strategy and how to approach testing on these platforms. And we're going to finish up with just a really quick look on some additional areas of opportunity that you can keep an eye on in late 2020 and beyond. So before we get into the meat of the presentation, I wanted to really quickly just share some additional background on the Centro Social team and what we do. We are one of the top independent social buying agencies in North America today, and our growth in Q1 of this year outpaced many other buying agencies on Facebook specifically by more than 30%. So as a media buying organization, social is definitely an area where Centro is heavily leaned in. In 2019, we delivered campaigns for more than 350 brands across all the top social networks. And we are today also a premium Facebook marketing partner with a Blueprint certified buying team of more than 28 people. So that status, which is based on our adoption of best practices and new tools, has allowed us to participate in many, many beta programs, specifically those involving things like advanced measurement, stories, messenger, and e-commerce tools. And we're often the first to hear about new features and trends when they're rolling out because of the direct access we have to many different departments, both inside Facebook, but also at the other social publishers that we work with. So many of the updates that you'll be hearing today are the result of some of those conversations and some of what we're hearing from our contacts at those networks. So with that, let's dive right in and take a quick look at where social media sits today. As the pandemic set in around coronavirus and social distancing measures started to go into place across the globe, really, people have started spending more or all of their time at home. And that means that they're surrounded by every single device that they own. We're all looking for ways to get news and information, but of course, we also want to be able to connect with friends and family, especially at a time when we can't be with them physically. But people also want to be entertained. We want to commiserate on what's going on. We want to find hope, and we want to share stories of what social distancing is like for each of us. And that's where the social networks have really stepped in to provide the perfect outlet for all of these activities. The data in this chart on the slide that you're seeing now came from a recent study from Mindshare, but I really think it helps illustrate the point that as many people are spending less and less time with family in person, they're spending more and more time on social media. And for years now, I think we've relied on these networks to help us stay connected, but that's become especially true during these times of crisis. As I mentioned a minute ago, one other specific reason people have flocked to these platforms is to get updates on what's happening around the spread of the virus. And in response, every social network was challenged with quickly putting practices in place to protect against the spread of misinformation and provide reliable and trustworthy resources. And you're seeing some examples here now on the screen. This battle is definitely ongoing across social media, but the effort really furthered their usage even more as a vital news source for people during these times. Many of the social networks are also assisting in the public health response by providing important information to health organizations and data that can help explain where people who may have been infected have been, what symptoms they talked about before testing positive, things of that nature. And they're also working to support some small businesses through the economic downturn with things like grant programs, and are very, very quickly rolling out new features that make it easier for business models to shift completely online, things like promoting gift card sales through a recent update that was released on Facebook and Instagram. But the outcome from the pandemic is that these social networks have become even more of a minute-by-minute utility for worldwide internet users. And it also means that users may not be engaging on the platforms in the same way that they did before the pandemic, as you're going to see when we dive in a little bit deeper. To illustrate even further the increase in engagement across social, I wanted to share some important statistics from some of the top social networks that we work with. But definitely keep in mind, all of the social apps are reporting increases in usage, content shared, time spent on the platforms during this time period. Kantar also recently reported that overall engagement across social media is up 61% year over year by the end of Q1, which is kind of crazy to think about. The largest increases in engagement are coming from definitely that 18 to 34-year-old age group, it looks like, but many of the platforms are seeing growth across all demographics. And some other really good context to keep in mind when looking at the statistics on the screen here is that a year ago, engagement rates across many of these platforms had started to plateau and were showing signs of slight decline over time. So it's really amazing to think about the impact that coronavirus has had on kind of reversing some of these trends and reinvigorating the space. Facebook activity, just to start on the left-hand side here, is up overall more than 37%. And we're definitely seeing concentrated growth in the usage of things like Messenger, video calls, and video streaming. And WhatsApp specifically also continues to rise in usage, which had started before coronavirus. But I think this 40% increase that we're seeing now could definitely signal some new feature enhancements or advertising opportunities that could be coming soon to WhatsApp. On LinkedIn, there's also been a huge increase in engagements between users on the platform, and people, businesses, and content creators are posting more often than ever before during the pandemic to take advantage really of the additional time being spent in the platform. But more than that, with layoffs happening and business operations really being turned upside down, this is where people are going to get their career on track, to get their business on track, to share stories and to get inspiration from others. When looking at Twitter, it's really interesting here to see that user counts are similarly on the incline once again, and this seems to be really driven by people seeking out up-to-date news or up-to-the-minute news, but also there's been a large increase in time spent with entertainment content in Twitter. So this is where people are going to talk about trending shows like Tiger King, streaming movies that they're watching, sports that they're missing, all of those types of topics. And finally, when looking at Instagram, the big news here is that stories usage, which was also increasing in popularity for more than a year now, took a large leap forward with the pandemic and was up 15% week over week throughout the month of April. Views and live content also doubled on Instagram as more and more people, I think, are going here for an escape and to really share their personal stories through the stories feature, especially as the pandemic drags on and on. There are some signs now that all of this engagement is starting to taper back off and may return to more normal levels by later this year. But there's a lot of speculation that this could have a lasting and long-term impact once again on how people use social media. For now, there are some definite themes, I think, emerging in the statistics across this entire slide. Really, you can see users are leaning into video, they're trying to stay connected, they're looking for entertainment, and they're looking for information. But now I want to take a closer look at some of the platforms that aren't mentioned on this slide, and that's what we're calling some of the more emerging platforms. So we're going to dig in a little bit on how people are using them today, the opportunity that exists for advertisers, and really keep in mind, in comparison to these numbers, the growth in some of these platforms has been really even more impressive, which is exciting to think about. So the first one we're going to talk about is Pinterest, and I should preface this one really in Snapchat as well, which we're going to be getting into later in the presentation, by saying, obviously, elephant in the room, this is not a new platform, so it's hard to call it quote unquote emerging, except that in the context of the fact that for many advertisers, they've never tested this platform, and historically, most advertising budgets have gone to Facebook and Instagram. So what we're starting to get a little bit of a sense of is that many advertisers are looking for different ways to diversify their media mix and test some of these different platforms that they've never leaned into before, as they're seeing their consumers spend more time in different places. So just for a little bit of background in case you're not super familiar, Pinterest is where people go for inspiration and ideas, specifically usually related to things like beauty, travel, event planning, recipes, style, and a large variety of other topics. The idea with Pinterest is really that you can get new products and services in front of users easily and increase exposure and influence in their long-term consideration to purchase. So this historically hasn't been the platform that's going to generate, massive ROI on day one, depending upon the product, but can definitely build awareness and long-term consideration here. And usually that effort is accomplished through a variety of informative and inspirational content that can be found as users complete specific searches inside the platform. However, during the pandemic, what we've seen is that people are definitely searching on Pinterest more than ever before. So searches are up 60% year over year, but also what they're searching for is certainly changing. So when isolation began back in March on this chart on your screen, you can see that people really started to search more and more for things that would meet their immediate needs. So things like recipes, activities to keep their kids busy when they were homeschooling, for example, different activities that they could complete inside the house. Now that people are returning to kind of plan for the future, what we're seeing is that people are searching for more future events, future trips, and that we're starting to see a shift in attitude toward more optimism. There are also now a lot more searches for topics like backyard renovation, gardening, home decor, areas that are rising in popularity because of the extra time people have been spending at home. And while many people have taken a break from things like diet-related searches, we're starting to once again see a resurgence in health-related content inside Pinterest. People are definitely moving on here from searching for things like basic bread recipes and are looking for pizza recipes and focaccia recipes, so it's getting a little bit more complicated. They're also relying on Pinterest to find solace. So we're seeing big spikes in things like self-care, mindful searches, stress relief topics, things like staying positive during hard times or staying positive during coronavirus. And a lot of people are searching in ways that shows that they want to show appreciation for others. So looking for things like teacher appreciation gifts, for example, as the school year is coming to a close. What's really exciting for me is that we're also seeing clicks on pins are up 30% this quarter, which is starting to show, I think, a stronger and faster intent to purchase for users in this platform after being exposed to a pin. So moving on to some of the advertising opportunities that exist here, I think what's also interesting when thinking about Pinterest is that historically 97% of the searches on this platform were unbranded. So there's a massive opportunity here to kind of influence and inspire based on just topics that people are interested in. And as you can see from some of these advertising examples on the screen, we're seeing a wide variety of ad types being used, from photo to video to carousel to rich pins, to accomplish a wide variety of objectives for a wider type of advertiser than ever before. So some of the brands that are still investing in Pinterest during the pandemic include CPG clients, and those advertisers are looking to tap into some of those search trends to promote different food products, cleaning products, etc. We're also starting to see some travel clients come back to the platform and reinvest, especially again as people are looking for those future travel plans. And some big trends here are around local travel destinations, state parks, or local attractions as they begin to reopen. At-home workout, health and fitness, self-improvement, and diet programs are also finding kind of a stride right now in Pinterest because they can easily promote healthy lifestyles and again tap into those search trends that are available. E-commerce is an area that's been growing on Pinterest for a long time. Before COVID, Pinterest was putting a lot of effort into growing their e-commerce products. But with shopping shifting online, I think more than ever before, users are starting to come here more often to look for not only inspiration, but also deals around specific products. And recent improvements in Pinterest's catalog-driven interactive ad formats are making it even easier for users to experience the products right in the feed and then immediately click to buy. So we're definitely starting to see a slightly shorter sales cycle here than we did in the past. And finally, we're seeing an increase in things like finance, telecom, and other types of advertisers who may not have felt like a natural fit on Pinterest previously, but are looking to tap into all this increased activity with strong awareness messaging. Moving on to the second platform I want to cover today, just in case you're not as familiar with Reddit. Reddit houses thousands of forum-like communities that are called subreddits around nearly every topic you can imagine. So think anything from really large topics like the upcoming election to niche fan groups around very specific television shows or sports or celebrities. Both the Reddit app and the website make it really easy for users to browse the most trending content available across the entire internet. So users can vote to bring that most popular content to the top of other users' feeds. And they can also post their own questions, topics, and updates in any of these subreddit forums to get feedback and advice from other users. While Reddit, I think, has kind of flown somewhat under the radar for a lot of advertisers for a while now, it's interesting that the platform has actually been around since 2005, although it did gain a lot of more widespread popularity, I think, after their redesign last year. Today, however, Reddit has more than 330 million monthly active users. And one reason it's been high on my watch list for social specifically is that of all of the social platforms that are out there, Reddit has maybe the most available unduplicated reach of them all, as you can see in this chart. So in general, the Reddit user is much more tech-minded. Typically, they're much more difficult to please. They're also very leaned into the platform. They're more likely than the average consumer to be more brand conscious. They're more likely to have a high household income. And they're first to adopt new products and services. So because Reddit is an information hub and it's where people go to express what they're really thinking and feeling, and it's anonymous, we weren't surprised to see an increase in activity because of COVID, but we were surprised to see that traffic on some pages was up more than 50% year over year. Specifically, page views are up across categories like business and finance, news and education, travel, gaming, and sports. But the conversation in these groups is also really interesting. People are going here to look for advice and pose questions. So topics like, I have a trip booked in July, should I cancel? Or what do you think will happen to flight prices after coronavirus? People are also going here to, of course, share positive stories. So we're seeing on subreddit topics like the funny subreddit, the awe subreddit, which is just cute things and puppies, memes, and the ask Reddit topics. Those are also up a lot in popularity. These trends, I think, all provide a really good opportunity for brands to engage with the Reddit community. And ads on the platform can appear in many different places. So you can run across the entire platform. You can lean into sponsoring just certain topics or subreddits, or you can participate more organically by setting up your own discussion boards or sponsoring what's called an Ask Me Anything session, featuring an expert in your industry to engage directly with the community. And as you can see here on the screen, some great examples of advertisers that are leaning into Reddit include, once again, technology, streaming, and entertainment. I think it makes sense, again, because this is a tech-minded audience. But a lot of these ads are promoting, new show and movie releases via streaming. App downloads are also incredibly popular, and not just for games, but also for other useful apps like Audible, who's promoting the soothing ability of their streaming tracks in this ad. I also really like the messaging on this Jack in the Box ad because it's a great example of a brand who's embracing the platform in their message. So they're using in the text there that r/popular nomenclature, which is the name of a subreddit theme. And they also included a very eye-catching video that was really hard to scroll past in the mobile feed. So it's easy to notice. And then as the final example of how to get creative on Reddit with your execution, this Xfinity sponsored Ask Me Anything campaign was with NASCAR driver Clint Bowyer, and it was aired right around as racing was getting ready to return with no fans in attendance. So this was a great way to engage NASCAR fans in a one-on-one way, brought to you by Xfinity. Moving on to the third platform, we're going to talk a little bit about TikTok. This one's very interesting. If you've never browsed the TikTok app, sorry, that's hard to say, I highly recommend it. It might be hard to understand just how addictive it could be if you've never been inside the platform yourself. But TikTok entered the United States right at a time when younger consumers were really looking for something to fill the void from Vine. So during the pandemic, TikTok has become the place kind of where culture happens. And when you talk to their team, that's how they describe it as well. And the reason is that this platform allows any user to create, promote, and react to short form video content with music overlaid. So there's been actually a 100% increase in creators on the TikTok app during the pandemic. And unlike Snapchat or Instagram stories, these posts don't disappear. They go into that creator's profile and they're searchable via hashtags. So I think that feature specifically really encourages everyone to want to become a creator and express themselves through video on this platform. TikTok was already on sort of a meteoric compared to the other social networks rise before the pandemic, but according to eMarketer, TikTok is experiencing a, quote, substantial boost during the coronavirus. It was actually the #1 most downloaded app in both the Google Play and Apple stores in all of Q1. And as you can see from this chart, from October to March, total unique visitors on the app grew actually 93%, with the largest spike in that data coming between February and March. So for context, 27% of all US adults from 13 to 35 reported using the app in April, but again, usage of TikTok is up across all demographics. So it's not just the young who are logging on since the pandemic began. We also took a quick look at search volume on Google around all of the social apps during the pandemic to just get another view at how interest is growing. And what we found was week over week from Q1 through early May, TikTok search volume interest was growing between 45 and 100%. So kind of crazy to think about. Average minutes on the platform per visitor is also up 30%. So that equates to more than 57 minutes per day now being spent on TikTok. And the key thing to keep in mind here is people are really going here for entertainment while social distancing. So because of these boosts, in April, TikTok was the most used social platform behind Facebook, YouTube, WhatsApp, Messenger, and Instagram for the first time ever. So as a platform, TikTok has started putting a lot more effort into growing their live streaming capabilities. This is where celebrities are now coming to engage with fans. And actually, we're also seeing that they're creating a lot of content on TikTok that's being shared to other platforms, such as Instagram, which ultimately drives awareness back to TikTok. So the impact this is having on how people participate in the platform is also starting to have an impact on brands. And while I would say not many of our advertisers are tapping into TikTok just yet, we're definitely starting to see a huge increase in interest and some tests by those especially who want to engage in kind of the fun, lighthearted nature of the platform. So one thing to keep in mind if you're considering testing TikTok is the production quality here can afford to be low because users are very used to the majority of the content being filmed on smartphones. And brands that are leading in here include entertainment and app downloads. Again, that makes sense considering TikTok is the #1 downloaded app that you would promote the download of other apps within this network. The second screenshot here I actually grabbed from my phone just a few days ago, but I thought it was interesting to see even the other social platforms trying to get in on the TikTok craze. Also, we're seeing a spike once again with e-commerce and apparel, especially among those brands that fit well with the TikTok consumer lifestyle. So think like casual brands or direct-to-consumer companies. And finance, once again, is starting to pop here as a rising category in terms of potential for investment, especially with challenger brands. So we're seeing ads discussing how to lower credit scores, online banking options, independent insurance companies, things of that nature. And keep in mind, all these examples are video focused because this is a video forward platform. And then finally, I wanted to just really touch briefly on Snapchat. And once again, like Pinterest, I recognize that this isn't a new platform, but it's definitely new to many advertisers. People are still using Snapchat to communicate with their friends, to build relationships, and to learn. And I think what's great about Snapchat is you can communicate here with these full screen ads in the homepage or on the Discover tab, or you can interact with users through AR-powered filters and lenses that are directly integrated in the camera, and those are much less expensive today than they were in years past. Snapchat has definitely had its ups and downs over the years, though, in terms of both popularity and advertising investment, and they've faced harsh competition from Instagram, as Facebook is not shy about rolling out competitive features that compete with much of what they offer. But many industry analysts are saying that Snapchat is the best position to benefit from COVID because the thing that keeps users coming back is the private video messaging capabilities. And those messages increased 30% in the last week of March alone. So this has definitely helped pop their user growth once again out of a plateau and created this 20% increase in daily active users year over year. So similarly to the other platforms, Snapchatters are spending more time inside, and Snap recently surveyed their user base and determined that when not on Snapchat, people are spending their time at home streaming entertainment, gaming, participating in online shopping, or ordering food. And so what's interesting is that the advertising examples that I have to share fall exactly into those categories. Although I would say Snapchat kind of remains a smaller portion of ad budgets than Facebook and Instagram, we are seeing some advertisers start to lean in more here. And I think it's not just to do with the increasing usage, but also advertisers are getting more comfortable with the formats like the non-skippable commercial breaks, the platform's ability to create strong return on investment, and also just our ability to create impactful visuals. So these examples here fall into the categories of streaming and entertainment, shopping and e-commerce, as you can see with the Discover ad for Wish in the second screenshot. We're seeing some restaurants and food delivery services lean in, fitness and wellness companies once again, and CPG products. And what I really love about this last example on the screen is that this is a more mature brand, Pampers, who's taking on a more mature audience and parents. And I think that's something that we had yet to see on a platform like this before the pandemic. So it's just a signal once again that advertisers are starting to get more comfortable with leaning in here. So you're probably wondering, where do I go from here? How do I think about getting started on these platforms? What do I do if I want to approach a test? The good news is all these platforms can now be bought through self-serve auction, which we at Centro have access to. So if you need assistance, please let us know and we're happy to help. But at a higher level, when you're thinking about how to diversify beyond Facebook and into other platforms, I think it's really important to know where your customers are spending their time, but also where your core competencies are. Because for many of us, testing budgets are tight right now. We fully recognize that. And even if you're in a position to try new platforms, it's very important to make sure that every single dollar is as impactful as possible. So I would not recommend testing a platform like TikTok if you haven't mastered Facebook and Instagram. If content isn't your strong suit, for example, if you're not comfortable leaning into more casual messaging, then maybe it's not a good fit. But if you are, then this could absolutely be worth a try. Also know that if you try to opt into a platform like Reddit, you may want to invest in a community strategy as well to help build rapport with users. So communication might need to be a strong suit there. You can also look to follow the lead of others. So spend some time in the platforms beyond what I'm sharing with you today in these few minutes that we have together. If you familiarize yourself with them and get used to the type of content in them, the type of brands that are advertising, the trends and topics that are important to users, that will ultimately help you stay much closer to the best way to reach your core customers in that platform. From a targeting perspective, when you're looking to implement a test, broader ultimately might be better to start. The targeting capabilities here aren't as tightly solidified as they are on Facebook. So going broad can really help you scale quickly and learn more quickly what's working inside each platform. You can, however, lean into alignment with things like lifestyle categories or contextual topics to find users likely to engage, such as targeting certain subreddit topics or keywords on Pinterest to find an authentic audience. You can also test leveraging custom data when possible to help deliver more personalized content to specific customer segments, but just be aware that the custom audience capabilities differ per platform. Again, if your strength isn't creative, this is a great opportunity to test any of these platforms, but if it's not in video production, consider leaning into something more like Reddit, or even relying on user-generated content or more organic feeling messaging. Before getting started, I would definitely recommend taking the time to think about what you really want to learn from the platform from a creative perspective and create a testing framework to support that. So whether it's understanding whether video works better than photo or what different types of messaging work better, knowing that up front will really help you learn where to put the most effort as your strategies evolve. And also be aware that it might take longer to get scaled learnings on these platforms because they're newer. But what we're seeing is that the creative might actually last longer on the platforms that is working well than it does on other platforms. So it's a little bit of a trade-off. And then finally, on the measurement front, I just wanted to caveat that placing each platform pixel when possible across as many touch points on your website is really key to understanding how these networks are driving engagement across the funnel. Some of them are going to have more view-through impact than click-through impact. So for example, on a platform like Pinterest, where the sales cycle may be much longer, it's important to look at both and understand how engagements are driving the ultimate results on your business. You could also consider things like studies and tools to analyze lift in sales or incremental brand impact when the media is a market, but just be aware there as well that there are varying scales of availability for these tools across each of these platforms at this time. And then a final quick note on messaging before we jump into some of the future looking topics is just, I think the most important thing to remember here is to just anticipate changes in user behavior. As we've seen definitely over the last couple of months, social moves really, really fast and trends change constantly. So I really like this quote on the top right here from Twitter that says, what might have felt like a good message yesterday might not be the right thing today. And what I think is even funnier about that is that this is coming from Twitter, and yet we're here talking about other emerging platforms. And who would have really thought that even a year ago, something like the TikTok video format would be taking storm during a time when we're all quarantined at home to avoid spreading a global pandemic? I mean, it's just crazy to think about. So if the platform you're investing in allows comments, as we've kind of talked about, engaging with users in these platforms is definitely important. So I would recommend that you monitor them, that you respond to them, and that you really understand how your customers are receiving your content. It seems like a no-brainer, but that can definitely fall by the wayside sometimes, especially when investing in a new platform for the first time. So it's important to keep that in mind. And as you've seen today, we've seen a lot of really great examples of how brands are leaning into these channels. But one thing we didn't discuss is how they're also focusing on supporting medical professionals, first responders, and the community at large with their messaging. And I think that kind of a story can really help build longer-term brand awareness and loyalty than sometimes just hammering on your latest product or what's for sale. So just keep that in mind in terms of how to make it more authentic and connect with people during this time period. So at the last few minutes here, I wanted to take a quick look ahead at some of the things to keep on your radar for the future. One statistic that I recently read that I thought was really interesting is that eMarketer projected that the boost we're seeing in social media as a result of COVID has the potential to last long into the future. And I think it's really because as people are building these new habits, they're quickly becoming kind of long-term game changers in how they interact inside social and across digital as a whole. So because of coronavirus, but also because of increases in usage, new features that are rolling out, generally evolving behavior, I believe the future of social is really here today. And I think you can really see this played out in Facebook Messenger specifically, because this is the platform that has the capability to tap into everything that people are looking for at this time period. You can understand how a user behaves. You can create a more personal one-on-one connection between them and another person or a brand. And I think brands are still largely trying to figure out how to implement strategies around Messenger today. At Centro, we are working through this process with some of our advertisers as we speak, and we have some partners who can help create these in-Messenger chatbot experiences. So again, please reach out if you have more questions or need more information on how to consider creating a solid strategy around an opportunity like this. There are definitely a lot of other new capabilities across all of social that you can tap into as well. But before we get into those, just to go a little bit deeper into Messenger, I wanted to make it clear that these programs today could be used for a variety of different objectives beyond just customer service, although that's a great reason to consider developing a chatbot and a Messenger program. We're also seeing brands use them to drive into call centers, to provide immediate information, to even drive to purchase in Messenger to allow you to find the nearest location or get updates on when the different locations are reopening. So it's a great way to kind of create that immediate one-on-one connection. The stories format is something we've also been, I think, watching and keeping an eye on for a long time. For many people, though, it's become really a natural habit to check your stories inside Facebook and Instagram before you even check the newsfeed. And we're seeing that usage time is shifting there across nearly all platforms that offer this format. Yet still today, only 51% of advertisers reported that they have invested in the medium to eMarketer. So I think there's still a massive opportunity there if you're not leaning into stories to do so. Really tapping into that vertical full screen format in order to capture max attention. It's a great way to kind of think about the crossover of a TikTok with a Snapchat with an Instagram in one piece of content that could potentially work across all platforms. Looking at the premium reserved opportunities, every single one of these platforms now is also offering some out-of-the-box ideas beyond just the in-feed inventory. And many of these do carry a premium price tag, but they also carry premium inventory. So things like a hashtag challenge that can be sponsored on TikTok and reach millions of people, looking at premium in-stream video opportunities across all the platforms, brand takeovers on Reddit or Twitter, and things like promoted trends, topics, or sponsorships across the platforms. If the budget is right and you're looking to make a big splash, and the timing is right in terms of your overall marketing strategy, new products that might be rolling out, or new announcements that the company has to make, this is a great way to get maximum impact. And actually, the price points for these are a little bit lower right now than they have been historically. And then finally, I would just encourage you to tap into all of the resources that you have at your disposal in terms of testing these new platforms. But obviously, feel free to reach out to us if there's anything that we could do to help you tap into those resources as well. Because many of these platforms do have things like creative consultations and design assistance programs available for new advertisers. So if creative is a concern, that could be a great way to help lower the barrier of entry. There also are some native video creation tools available in platforms like Instagram and Snapchat that I would recommend you taking advantage of if video has been a burden in the past. And then the last thing is that all of these platforms have tons and tons of webinars and newsletters and information available on their agency sites right now, or on their advertising sites to share. So if you're not following those regularly, definitely tap in, because it's the best way to get the quickest updates available on what's happening in the space. And then the last little thing I wanted to cover here for those that are kind of willing to consider testing new things is that you might be able to find unbelievable value in the market right now. So this chart here is according to our data here at Centro, but this is very in line with what others in the space are reporting. And what this shows is the variance in CPMs across Facebook's entire network. So this is Facebook Audience Network and Instagram from November of last year through May of this year. While we did see some expected seasonal efficiencies in January and a couple of peaks and valleys here and there, what I think is most important to note is if you look at the May 5th data, we're seeing 25% or more declines in CPMs in this platform, and that's actually true of most of the platforms that we buy on. So one other interesting point here on Snapchat specifically is that we've seen some CPMs in the sub $2 range. So while testing in the past may have been a big stretch, if you do have the funds available, this might be a great time to do it for a good value. And I think definitely as stay-at-home orders continue to relax and some brands also look to reinvest, we'll continue to see some diversification in dollars potentially going to new platforms. But what's most exciting is that these low CPMs can equate in some cases to very high return on ad spend, especially for DR advertisers. But acquisition campaigns too, we're seeing come in at very low prices and being very fruitful for many of the types of advertisers we discussed today. So in conclusion, I think, while many brands are investing more in social, of course, many others, including small businesses, are decreasing their budgets overall. And I think some of that is what's causing this kind of supply and demand shift and the reduction in CPMs. But if you're not spending right now, hopefully at the very least, these ideas will give you some food for thought as you do start to build out this long-term plans for recovery and potentially considering some new platforms to test and try in the meantime. And so with that, Ryan, I think if we have any questions, we can flip it over and open it back up to QA.
Perfect. Yeah, awesome, Amy. Thank you so much for running through all that. So much information to be able to digest. We do have a number of questions that have come in. If you haven't found that questions tab, it's in the webinar app. It should be on the right-hand side. Just plug in your question there, and we'll do our best to go through these. And a few folks had asked about the slides and even the recording of the webinar. Yes, we will share all of this with you. It will be sent out via email later today. The first question I had, you kind of talked about some of the lower barriers for entry, kind of from a cost perspective. What do you feel like is realistic, and can you talk about maybe some of the ad opportunities for maybe folks that have a lower threshold, at least to start within any of the platforms that you kind of talked about?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the reality is I don't think it takes a lot to try, a few tactics and a few pieces of creative in many of these platforms, especially with the efficiency and rates that we're seeing right now. But on the flip side, I would just caution when you're creating a testing budget against limiting yourself so much that you're not going to have enough scale to really get any learnings out of the platform to be able to call it a success or not. And so for that reason, when we're working with advertisers, we typically recommend, at least a few $1,000s, usually in the $5,000 range, for at least, 30 to 60 days, just to get a feel for how that platform performs. That being said, some of these platforms like Pinterest and Reddit actually have minimum amounts that they require, unless you want to buy on a credit card basis. But for most of our advertisers, they want to buy, on an IO that they can pay later. And so there are also some kind of platform minimums and other things to keep in mind there. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think that you could be impactful on these platforms with as little as, say, $5,000. And I think if your budget is lower than that, I would just caution you against trying to test too many things at one time. So maybe it's only running, one audience and it's as broad as possible and it's one piece of creative or two pieces of creative max, so that the dollars don't get spread out further and kind of dilute the learnings that you're receiving.
Gotcha. A couple of questions about which of these offer self-serve solutions, or you would need to work with somebody like a Centro. Can you speak to offhand which ones are, I guess you're able to buy self-serve, or that you need to work with somebody like a Centro?
Yeah, so actually all of the platforms that we discussed today do have self-serve buying available. I would say the benefit of working through someone like a Centro is that, one of the things that's really difficult about onboarding a new platform is understanding what the best practices should even be in terms of how to buy it, getting up to speed on the training of the platform. Unfortunately, they're not all as sophisticated as buying in a Facebook is going to be. So the benefit of working through someone like us is, we have those relationships in place and we have an established pipeline around how to buy those ads, as well as best practices because of the testing that we've done alongside those platforms, to really be able to help guide how to make those dollars most impactful. Does that answer the question? If it doesn't, please feel free to reach out to me after, and I'm happy to go into more detail.
Yeah, I think you covered it off there pretty good. A handful of questions about TikTok. I think there's definitely some fascination with that. I imagine many of the folks dialed in were maybe adding to those numbers, finally getting around to download the app. Amy, how have you seen, or some of the reports that you've read as far as like the changing demographics? I know you said it was the number one app, during the pandemic and stay at home, but imagine there's a trend to older audiences, not just Gen Z and below. You're getting the millennials and the Gen Xers and even beyond that are downloading it. Do you know any of those numbers offhand, or what kind of trends are you seeing there?
Yeah, unfortunately, in our conversations with TikTok, they've not shared specifics in terms of usage by demographic, but they have said that they're seeing growth across all demographics. Anecdotally, I would say, if you're on the platform, I mean, I'm a mom, I'm, my upper 30s now, and I'm surprised at how many of my friends my age and older have gotten on TikTok in the last 30 days. It's really crazy. But I would also say, I think as the amount of content creators and the influencers that exist out there today continue to kind of shift to this platform, because we're seeing, again, a lot of them are going to TikTok to kind of create the content, and then they're sharing it out from there to other places like Instagram or Twitter or other networks, that we will continue to see an increase in different types of demographics getting onto the platform. But yeah, I mean, I think anecdotally, I would definitely say that we're feeling as though older demographics are getting on more than ever before, and then it's definitely moving beyond that kind of 13 to 17-year-old sweet spot in terms of their age ranges. I believe TikTok has said that 13 to 34 is still their largest market, though.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So I'm outside of that, but yeah, I've been fascinated just the ability from a storytelling perspective, of the content that people put into it, both from like just entertainment to educational, whether it's like cooking kind of how-tos of Lizzo making Jamaican vegan beef patties or something. It's amazing. And then all the dance routines, but it's fascinating just the editing and the effects that can kind of go into it, and the time that people are investing, individuals, but also some of the businesses that are out there. It's very impressive to see.
Yeah, I also think when you think about like the viral nature of social that was so huge really when this industry first started, I mean, TikTok has done such a crazy job at really blowing that out again, because of all these trends that are really originating there and then just exploding everywhere else. And the dance challenges are a really great example of that.
Yeah, well, I think it's been fun seeing the cross generation. Okay, the next question, I feel like questions. Robin, Natalie, Tom, Jenny, Ramad, they all had a question around B2B, and really all of these platforms as a whole. Are there any that you see are just really smart for B2B advertisers, brands, agencies that are specializing in that have seen some success there? I think based upon our experience or even what you've seen just in kind of eyeballing across all these different platforms.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming you mean outside of LinkedIn when we're talking about B2B. Yeah. But yeah, I think the challenging thing about B2B is the data. And getting at the right audience on some of these other platforms is much more difficult than it is on LinkedIn or even on like a Facebook. But where we are seeing is that the platforms that can ingest CRM lists and allow us to create lookalike audiences can be really great opportunities even for B2B, because that can allow us to get as close as possible to that correct consumer. And then the other thing to keep in mind is some of these platforms are starting to open up again and allow third-party data. So we have a lot of B2B clients that are looking to tap into third-party data sources from partners like a Dun & Bradstreet or an Oracle that can help them identify segments like small business owners, just as an example. And we are now beginning to get the capabilities again to create those types of audiences across any platform with that data. So I think as those functionalities continue to evolve on these newer platforms, that will allow them to be more approachable for B2B. But today it's tough just from an audience targeting perspective for sure, and something that has to be really closely looked at and considered before investing in any of them.
Yeah, I feel like the content side of it has to be there as well, so it's the right kind of content context. I will say from a Reddit perspective, it's a place that I've gone to, done some research specifically within the ad tech space, that I'm always pleasantly surprised with some of the responses. But yeah, I think it will be interesting to see how it matures a little bit.
Yeah, that's a great
questions.
Point.
Sorry. A couple questions about like ROI and kind of measuring that. I know you talked near the end about really making sure that tracking pixels are in place on the websites and potentially even in the apps to be able to kind of track the conversions and those view throughs. Any other tips and best practices for effectively measuring ROI?
Yeah, I would say definitely don't go in expecting this to be apples to apples against something like a Facebook or search or many of the other channels that are more mature, because the fact of the matter is your return on ad spend from a per purchase standpoint just may not be there immediately on these platforms. So they still have to be considered a little bit of a test. And in some cases, we recommend looking at other types of key performance indicators beyond, that hard sales metric, which I know is very, very hard, because at the end of the day, that's the thing that drives businesses forward. But if you can make a case for, again, the view through aspect and how much these channels are influencing driving traffic to your site, which ultimately may be converting on another channel, and consider different ways to tell that attribution story, I think that can help validate these channels' places in your overall media mix, even if you're not seeing that immediate bottom line return on ad spend number that you're hoping for. So that would be the biggest thing, I think, is just cautioning against comparing them apples to apples to other platforms at this time, and really thinking about how they can all work together.
I like it. This question from Carrie, I really like around, have you seen an increase in local advertisers using these platforms more? Can all of them show ads only in a specific geographic area? For example, a furniture store wants to show ads on Pinterest in a specific city or DMA. I feel like that's something that we've talked about, I think, a lot over the last several weeks and months, as you've seen more states, more municipalities start to open up, and really recommending some variation, right? It's more appropriate based upon as people are getting out, as businesses are starting to open up. What do you recommend, and what's available for localization across some of these platforms that you talked about?
Yeah, so it definitely varies by platform. In general, the more scale the platform has, the more granular their geographic targeting becomes. So on a Facebook or an Instagram, where you can go all the way down to an address with, just a mile radius, you're not going to have that capability on a TikTok at this point. So it depends on how granularly that location targeting needs to get as to which platform I would recommend investing in. But that said, yes, we are definitely seeing a lot of local advertising investments. Pinterest is one great example. I think I shared in the travel experience example how there are a lot of ads for local travel popping up now because people don't want to go too far from home and they may not necessarily want to fly, but they're willing to get in their car and drive a couple of 100 miles to have a good experience outside of their house. So things like that where they can be targeted kind of on a somewhat broad but also somewhat narrow level on a platform like a Pinterest, I think we're definitely starting to see pop. Whereas other platforms like TikTok, those campaigns tend to be much larger, more national in scale, and much more broad just because the geographic targeting capabilities don't exist yet.
Got it. So we have some questions about, B2B, really focused targeting, very fine-tuned, ROI-driven campaigns. Maybe flip over to the other side. I'm kind of fascinated by this. As you look across all these different platforms and all these new opportunities, what's something that you, Amy, that you've seen that you wish a client was like, I want to do this. I've got this magical bucket of money, and I'm ready to invest and see something. Is there one opportunity or a couple opportunities that are out there that you're just, chomping at the bit that you wish somebody would take advantage of?
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about a magical bucket of money, then I would say definitely some of those more premium opportunities that I shared on, I think it was the second to last slide, that exist even on Facebook, for example, we continue to see kind of underutilized. And I think those are such great opportunities to make a big splash. The ones that I'm really excited about are the in-stream reserve inventory that exists for video across many of these platforms. You can buy that on TikTok, on Facebook. And I think it's a really great way to align strong video content with premium publisher content, especially at a time when, all of these platforms are really pushing live video, streaming video, and people are spending massive amounts of time on those activities as well. And then the other thing that I think would be really fun and cool is just something like the TikTok hashtag challenge. I mean, I really briefly mentioned that, but basically that allows a brand to work with TikTok to create a hashtag and almost like a movement that could be built around a dance or any kind of video that can be shared with the entire TikTok audience and can really spread virally from there. So it carries somewhat of a premium price tag, but I think, again, if you're looking to make a big splash, if you feel like that's the right audience for you, something like that is fairly underutilized right now and can bring a huge amount of recognition in terms of brand awareness.
I love it. And this question may kind of go be a spin off of that from Thomas. What about politics? So now that rallies and in-person canvassing are not an option, what types of opportunities or things do you think folks should be watching for, whether they're on the candidate side or maybe the causes side? Any thoughts there? Have you seen anything really interesting?
Yeah, I mean, the unfortunate thing is that many of these platforms do not accept political advertising at this time. So in terms of paid opportunities, there are definite limitations that exist depending on the platform that we're talking about. But on the organic side, I think, we talked a little bit about just involvement in the community, spreading those positive stories and positive messages. I think a platform like Reddit, for example, could be such an amazing outlet for that, just in terms of organic communication and community activation, whether that's a candidate or a cause or an advocacy, effort. I think, considering more unique, innovative ways to use a platform like that to reach the community could be very impactful.
Got it. Do you think that there's going to be growth in influencers for the candidates and causes side I don't know if I necessarily want to call it a workaround because we don't necessarily want to have a workaround, but be able to tap into some of those folks that have larger followings to be able to get that message out?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's something that we're watching really closely on TikTok, actually, because again, as that platform kind of continues to mature, we're seeing a lot of the content, as you mentioned, move away from those dance videos and the, the fun, lighthearted things to more educational type content. So I personally am really interested to see how that platform ends up getting activated throughout the rest of this political season to really try to motivate people and to mobilize people behind different causes. And I think this isn't political related, but we kind of saw a hint of that even through like the stay-at-home movement, for example, that Instagram put out, and many different hashtags that are being used on TikTok to promote things like supporting local restaurants. So I could very easily see that becoming a natural extension into different influencers wanting to support different causes or different candidates.
I like it. I like it. Yeah, and I mean, you wonder if there's kind of that almost indirect approach that it's still authentic, but not, being overt, just like how the recommendation that you had of not actively discussing COVID, but being able to talk more about, hey, we're open for business and we're taking these precautions for you, and just kind of the shift in the messaging that's there, that it is that more kind of positive type of approach, but it's really understood by everybody. What about when we talk about emerging social platforms? Some of these are ones that people are familiar with, but are seeing massive growth in users and new advertising opportunities. What about the emerging social platforms that maybe didn't make the cut for this presentation, but that you and your team are keeping an eye on? Are there any that are out there that maybe we should keep our eyes and ears open for?
Yeah, for me, it's really about looking at this point outside of the United States, if I'm being honest. I think, the TikTok story is really compelling because they're owned by an Asian parent company who has many other apps that are widely popular in Asia. And so when I'm looking at emerging platforms, I think I'm keeping an eye on anything like that may have a really strong user base globally and just hasn't taken hold here yet. And it may mean that those platforms come to the United States and gain popularity, or it may mean that those parent companies develop, spin-off apps that fit kind of the American consumer better. So those are some of the things that we're keeping a close eye on. Also, I mentioned WhatsApp really early in the presentation, but it has a massive global user base right now, and not a lot of advertising opportunities exist. So I think that's a big one that as messaging and video chat continues to evolve, we're expecting there to be some really good opportunity there. But globally, again, we're keeping an eye on a lot of kind of apps that exist in other areas like Asia and Europe and South America to kind of see what happens with some of those.
I love it. I love it. Look abroad for some of those influences and the what's next. All right. Well, awesome. Amy, any final thoughts or closing words before we wrap up?
No, I mean, I hope that the content today just kind of inspired some new ways of thinking around the possibilities. And, definitely for us, I think at the end of the day, I don't want to mislead anybody by not saying that Facebook is still the vast majority of the social media that we buy and many of our advertisers buy. I think the reasons are still that they have the widest user base, the best targeting available, the widest variety of advertising products available, the most reach, efficient rates, and generally we can provide really great return on ad spend there. But for many of our advertisers, we're just hearing a general kind of consensus that they want to explore new opportunities, and that now is a really great time to do that. So I would encourage you to just kind of look at it from an open-minded perspective. Once again, think about where your core consumers are spending their time, what really fits best with your brand and your competencies in terms of being able to lean into these platforms. And then give it a go and let us know how we can help.
I love it. I love it. Great job, Amy. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining us, for the excellent questions. We were not able to get to all of them, which I apologize for. We'll do our best to follow up with each of you individually, but please reach out with questions, reach out to your Centro rep or contact us, and we'd be happy to help you and provide some more guidance. This does conclude our presentation for today. When you log out, you will receive a survey, and I appreciate you giving us some feedback on your experience today and also other things that you'd like to see for future webinars. As I mentioned, the slides presented as well as the recording of the webinar will be sent to you via email a little bit later today. Please stay healthy, take care of yourselves, stay positive. I'm Ryan Manchi. This has been the webinar series brought to you by Syntro Institute, and I'm so glad that you joined us. Thank you, everyone.